Well, welcome everybody. It is great to see you here on May 2. And this is our first Sunday, and it's a special day because we get to meet a new friend. We get to meet Moses Maris, and Moses is going to be our worship leader in Awakening this year. We're very excited about Moses being a part of this. Josh Banner has been the foundation of Awakening year after year, so you know him, but I'm not sure how much you know about him. So we're going to find out a little bit about Josh's past and things that get him going. And we appreciate the students, high school students and college students that are on the line here, Eli and Bethany and Alex. So we're going to start off with prayer, and then we'll just have a little Q&A and interview. And any of you students that are interested in finding out a little more about Josh and Moses, just feel free to ask a question as well. So let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this time we have to be with you and to think about what you're going to do in and through us in Awakening 2021. We thank you for the ministry that Awakening has had in our lives, our personal lives, and how it's affected us um, in our ministries and others as well that we minister to. We thank you for Moses being a part of Awakening this year. We're so excited to have him and his gifts and creativity and musicianship. And we thank you for Josh's heart that beats after yours, that he wants everyone's to beat in that same direction, Lord. And may we get to know each other better, and what causes our heart to do a pitter patter after you, Lord. And thanks for this opportunity that we have through technology to get together. In your holy name, amen. Well, this is great. So Moses, you are going to be our 2021 worship leader this year. The students have had Brianna Chapman or Harris over the past 3 years. And Bree moved to Chicago, and she thought seriously of doing it this year, as you all know. But she's starting or going to start a church job. Very likely, she could already have it because I haven't talked to her for a couple of weeks. But she knew that she wouldn't be able to get away when you just start a job for actually 2 weeks in a way. So we're so thrilled to have you. I mean, you're just an amazing guy. So tell us a little bit about, where did Moses grow up? Did you live in Holland your whole life, or did you grow up in Siberia and then move here to get
Yeah.
warm or something? Yeah, tell us a little bit about Moses.
Well, I am so excited to meet you guys and Bethany and Eli and Alex. Alexander or Alex? What do you go by?
Alex
I
is
like
fine.
Alex is fine. Some people like the full name. No, I'm excited, and even I'll share a little bit about myself. But I'm really excited, just even to connect with Josh. Josh and I have known each other for a while, but it's been a bit since I've been able to connect with you, and just eager to sit with you too, Josh and Jim. Just getting to know you over the last. Well, I've known you a little bit, but over the last couple of months, maybe a little more. So, a little bit about myself quickly. I am. I'll share first about my family and then kind of where I grew up. But I am married. My wife's name is Tessa, and she is. We've been married. It's going to be coming up on 12 years on June 12th. So I think that's during Awakening, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or June 9th, or yeah, June 12th, 2009. So we have 2 kids. We have an 11-year-old. It's my daughter. Her name is Kinley, Kinley, and my son's name is Kellen, Kellen. And so they're busy and crazy, but it's good. And so I actually grew up here in Holland, Michigan. My mom and dad were both born here, but my mom's family is Puerto Rican, and my dad's family is from Texas. And so I grew up here, right here in Holland, Michigan. I went to Holland High School and graduated. I'm pretty old, yeah, but I graduated in 2002. So I'm coming up on, 20 years out of high school, which is a little bit crazy to think about. Yeah, I went to, how far you want me to jump into where I went to school after high school, Jim?
Sure.
So there is a small Bible Institute college in Dallas, Texas, that is called Christ for the Nations Bible Institute. And I, right after high school, I went there, and I studied, the degree is kind of a funny degree. It's called Practical Theology, and with an emphasis on youth ministry. I had a huge passion to be a youth pastor. or work with youth in some capacity. And then so I kind of focused on that a little bit, and moved back to Holland in 2006. And I think that's when I met Josh, actually, when I was doing some stuff with Hope College a little bit back then. So yeah, it's been cool, and I've been here ever since. And yeah, that's the first part. I don't know how far you want me to
No,
keep
that's
sharing.
fine. So you graduate college, you come back to Holland, and are you looking for a church job, or what do you?
Yeah. So back then, it sounds funny to say back then, but back then it was really it wasn't as common church ministry jobs. At least I didn't realize how common it was to actually get a full-time ministry job. So I started doing a couple different things. My first ministry job right out of college here in Holland was at Maple Avenue. I didn't know if you knew that, Josh. I was an intern, 12 hours a week with CJ, doing some
Wow.
intern of fine arts, I think was the job description. And then that's
Wow.
through that, I was doing that. And then I was also helping CJ Greer. I don't know if you know him, but he was involved with the Hope College Gospel Choir. So he kind of brought me in a little bit to just kind of play with the band along with a few others, and kind of got connected through that. And then I also worked a full-time job at a tool and die shop, so a machine shop where I was doing some machining and just trying to figure out if there was an opportunity. And within that, actually, there's a church. It's no longer a church, but it was called Montello Park. Was it Christian Reformed?
Christian Reformed, yeah.
Christian Reformed, yeah. And I was working with the youth. I was hoping to get a youth pastor job there, but they kind of were going through a transition. So I worked with an after-school program there. And that was kind of the first ministry experience until I landed at a church around 8 months into being back in Holland, called Ridge Point Church, where I'm actually serving at right now. So there's a couple little stops in between, but yeah, I started a full-time job at Ridge Point just early 2007, late 2006. It was kind of funny how it all played out, but
Yeah. So when the church would hire you, they would hire you as being the upfront guy behind the keyboard or guitar or voice, or what was your how'd you
no,
start that off?
no. So at Ridge Point, we had a little bit of a different structure in terms of what the worship leadership looked like. So yeah, that's a whole nother story. As I mentioned, I really wanted to go into youth ministry, and then I kept getting some opportunities around worship and music, and so I moved into that direction. And so when I got hired at Ridge Point, I got hired in a role called instrumental music coordinator. So what that meant was I worked only with the band, and just kind of prepping them, arranging charts for them, kind of running them through rehearsals. And then we also had, again, the structure was different, but we had a vocal coordinator who would work with the vocal teams and our volunteer worship leaders. And then we kind of worked together to kind of put our services together and make sure that we were ready to go for our weekend. So I wasn't really an out front person. I was kind of sitting behind the keyboard, leading the band and kind of supporting our worship leaders and volunteer worship singers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
people have different ideas of what it's like to go into ministry, and sometimes it's birthed from that type of situation that you were in, as far as the leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people start off as the person in charge of planning the whole service. So what took place to bring you to that point? Because that's a lot of what you do now.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that whole experience, when I think about it now, really, really shaped me. I love being around people. But I'm also really quiet and can be shy at times. And so, the experience of learning how to support our other leaders and not really be the person who is the focal person or the person always up front, really helped me become self-aware of what kind of leader I was shaping into. So it shaped me in a way that I didn't need to be the person singing every song. I didn't need to be the person that was visible every weekend. And so it really helped me understand it was more about supporting and building up the people around me. And so I'm a unique, my approach to leading worship or as a worship pastor is different because of that. And so I really, someone told me one time, you have your blind spots. So if if you can figure those out and work on those and kind of surround yourself with ways to kind of help other people lead you through, help you with those, and then it'll be huge. And so that's one of the things that's really shaped me, and I've learned a lot from it, just to kind of sit back and support, but still effectively lead, which has been a cool thing.
So your instrumental background and vocal background, did you have a lot of training in that in college and high school prior to, or did you pick a lot of that stuff up on your own? How did that all work?
No, that's kind of a cool story. My dad, who Josh knows my parents a little bit too, and my dad has been playing guitar for many years, over 40 years. So his story, as I mentioned, his family was from Texas. They were migrant workers. They would come up to Michigan for the summer to work in the fields, picking blueberries and cherries. And my dad learned how to play guitar by ear. One of the foremen at the farm taught my dad kind of, hey, here's some chords. And so him and my uncles learned how to play music by ear. And so I grew up in that naturally. And so my favorite instrument to play, which I don't get to play often, is percussion, drums, that kind of thing. It was something that I was able to jump into and play along. And this is the story of me learning how to play keyboard, which is what I mostly play now. Is my grandpa, my mom's mom, was a pastor, and he at 67 years old was diagnosed with cancer. And he was one of my best friends and somebody who's had the most influence in my life, even now when I think of him. And when he found out he had cancer, I sat down with him and he said he would love for me to learn how to play a song at his funeral. And that was something that, when I was young, really 97, that really shook me a little bit, because it was an emotional thing to know that, my grandpa had a terminal illness, but also just knowing that he wanted me to do that. And so I got a chord book at a music store called Tropical Sound Music. I don't think it's been around Holland for a long time now, but I got a chord book there and learned how to play the chords of a song, and my sister sang. And so that's really what kind of started me. And then I just learned and watched other people in what they did. And it's really been just something that I've kind of learned over time. And I think the gift that my dad had of learning by ear really, he kind of, I think it passed down, in some ways. So no training. I've never had any training on it. And sometimes it's cool to be able to say that, but sometimes I'm like, oh man, I wish I knew that, because then I had to figure out and learn it at some point, and it took me a lot longer to kind of learn some of it than most people. Yeah, but no kidding. I bought a book called Music Theory for Dummies at Barnes and Noble, and just to kind of understand, and it really actually was very helpful for me and taught me a lot. And I think I'm pretty sure I still have that book, actually.
That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we have 2 Hope students on this call, and is that one of the texts that you use there in music theory for dummies?
That's more of a outside of class option.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Moses, you're leading worship, and then after a worship service, the girls probably rush the stage, and that's how you met your wife. Is that what happened?
No. This doesn't work like that. I was praying for 40 days and 40 nights, and God she appeared after that prayer and fasting. No, my wife is actually really involved in worship too. She's a volunteer, but she's really involved. This is, again, a crazy story, but my wife was in this back when American Idol was really popular. Holland, you guys know where the Park Theater is downtown?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, they put on this little show called Lakeshore Idol. Idol, yep.
I was the judge. I was one of the judges for that.
Yeah. So I was the first year I was a judge with CC and Red, and that was the only year that I did it.
Okay.
It was the first year at the Park Theater. And Tessa was part of that, and through that we kind of met, and a few of us started hanging out, and yeah, it just that's how it happened. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So the first year was at the park. Okay, the one that I was at was the Knickerbocker.
Yep, I think that was the second and third years.
Sure. Sure,
Make
and
a
then it was
record,
done for whatever reason.
yeah.
So we're gonna come back to you, Moses, in a minute. But Josh, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, many students have know you that have been in Awakening. There's a number that are going to be new this year. Right now, we've got 27 kids paid registrants for Awakening this year, and I would say a good half of them never met you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, are you from? Did you grow up in Israel, Palestine?
Oh boy, when I was at Hope College, early on, there was a Saturday Night Live skit with Jake Gyllenhaal played Mahmoud, some Middle Eastern character, and all the students started calling me Mahmoud or something like that, which I think would be an honor. But I am not. It's so funny. I get pegged for Italian, Greek, Middle Eastern, but my parents' Banner is a British name, and I think some of my dark complexion comes from. Ironically, I didn't know it mattered until I got to Hope in 2006. Is Dutch, and it's a region of the Netherlands that's closer to France. They actually call it a Black Dutch heritage, where there's a darker complexion. But anyway, I didn't know that mattered until I got here. Yeah, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm older than Moses. He said he's old, but I'm older. I'm not as old as Jim.
Thanks. You're right.
But so I'll try to figure out how to do this in the bird's eye view. Moved to the farm my father grew up on, went on my 11th birthday. That was outside of Champaign-Urbana in Illinois. And that had a huge impact on me. Moses was talking about grandparents, and that got me all wistful and time with my grandfather working out in the farm. But ended up at Wheaton College from 93 to 97. And I picked that school mostly because it's a school my dad thought I should go to. And I had no idea what to do. And I just figured I probably would disappoint him on lots of other things. At least I'll honor him in this decision.
Wow, good for you.
But I thought at Wheaton I was going to get a ministry degree and even graduate early, go straight into seminary. Like I wanted to maybe do a 3-year plan. I was involved in a vineyard church in the Chicago area, and there was a big push for planting churches at that point. And I thought I was going to plant a church before I was 25. And the arts messed with everything. I started writing music in college, and I never led worship in front of people, ironically, until my 3rd year of college. I was in the campus ministry program as a student volunteer, and I got to lead worship for the first couple times that we'd never had contemporary worship in our chapel program. So that was one of my first experiences of trying to be a leader. But that was really the vineyard influencing me. We had gotten into Matt Redman music. That was not a big thing yet, but the crazy story is that we were singing "Better is one day in your courts." Better. We learned that because Matt came from England to our church in Chicago, and then after college, I ended up doing an internship at a church in Oklahoma City with a worship leader named Charlie Hall. That's a part of the Passion movement. Charlie's probably written songs that some students in Awakening would know at some point. But I ended up leading Better Is One Day at our church there and taught that to Charlie Hall. And then all of a sudden, Matt Redman became a part of the Passion. So anyway, I like to say that that's such a great song. It would have made it into the church somehow, some way. But back in college, that was this really kind of obscure thing. Contemporary worship music was not common in most churches at that point. This is the early 90s. So when I was in high school, I ordered cassette tapes from Dennis Jernigan in Oklahoma City. It was I want to thank you. That's not his song. Something like that. Now that is his song. Some of you probably know some Dennis Jernigan.
Yeah.
The point is, something happened to me with God when I was young, and I didn't have a place that obviously made that easy for me to figure out. And with college, I was over at this vineyard because the vineyard was one of the first groups of churches that were putting out records to celebrate and to release worship in lots of expressions. And so I was doing some mentoring with the worship leader there. And then I ended up in Oklahoma. And in Oklahoma, Moses was talking about all his random jobs. And I, from farm work to waiting tables to one summer, I moved sprinklers in a gated community. I delivered food. I was an office administrator for a insurance agent. Got fired from that job. But the point is, there wasn't a real path. What I could say is that first pastor I worked for in Oklahoma, I ended up being an intern at that church, working with Charlie Hall. And then eventually Charlie's ministry was getting so big that he was gone a lot. So I ended up becoming I wasn't the lead worship leader because Charlie had done such a great job of mentoring so many of the younger guys around me, my buddies that were interns with me. But I ended up basically becoming an administrator at that church, leading a lot, but also sharing that. And we had this amazing community of songwriters. And I started to say the lead pastor there was describing to me, there's, if you think about a stoplight in red, yellow, and green, a lot of when you're younger and you have the sense of God calling you into something, you're going to just by nature have to try lots of things. And by nature of being a rookie, a lot of it's going to be in the red and the yellow zone. And you're going to start to notice flashes of green. Like, oh, that's what I really love to do. That's what I really love to do. And the idea here is that you go through your 20s and 30s and you start to move further away from red and yellow and closer into your green. And then by the time you're in your golden years and your real long stride, you should largely, like I would think 55, 60 plus, you should really, if you've been wise and careful in living for God's purposes, you should be able to function largely in your green. You're always going to have yellow because that's the broken world we live in. But so I'd say that the ironic thing is, after being in Oklahoma, I ended up at this position at Hope College in 2013, in and out of different graduate school programs, asking lots of big questions about what worship is. And being at Hope really worked well because I could teach in the studies and ministry minor degree program and ask these questions about what language is, what music is, how God can use the arts to form disciples of Jesus. And I could ask those questions along these awesome college students. But I was still wrestling with what worship can and should be when I got to Hope in 2006. And I was there for 8 years until 2013. And technically, I'm still an adjunct professor at Hope, but I haven't taught a class in a couple semesters because I've started a nonprofit that allows me to serve mostly pastors and prisoners. And so the long story is that I loved serving and writing music and making records. But the fundamental thing that I learned, my deepest green zone and all of that, is really sitting with people on a one-on-one basis and listening to the story that God is unfolding for them. And I can do the corporate thing, and I enjoy that at times, but I'm not really made for that. So I love sitting with mostly pastors, and if it wasn't for the pandemic, I'd be at a prison every other week, praying with men there. And so ironic that for a while there, as I started into this new ministry, we call it spiritual direction. It's basically discipleship. I thought I was done with the arts. I thought I was done making music, but I'm sitting outside by my house. What you could see right back there is a garage, and there's an apartment above there, which is a recording studio. And so I'm making music almost every day these in this season of my life. I'm not using it for corporate worship, but I use it to create meditations for people. And so, yeah.
So when Hope hired you to be the chaplain of worship, or whatever your title was, you were leading the gathering. You were
Mhm.
leading three services a week, right?
Yeah, back then I took over for an awesome worship leader that we're all friends with, Dwight Beal, who's still around town here. And Dwight had really grown the worship ministry during the time when I was a college student, when no one really sang with their heart and had the freedoms to pick up all kinds of different instruments. And so Dwight had grown it into this really beautiful, enormous ministry that I inherited. And so that required me to be in the center of 4 worship services a week. And that would be a Sunday night gathering service, and then 3 Monday, Wednesday, and Friday worship services for chapels.
And so
Yeah.
you did that for 7, 8 years, and then
Yeah.
did it just not fulfill something in you, or what? Did you feel called to something else?
Yeah, I'll say this for students at all levels that are discerning these questions about, who am I as a worshiper? Who am I as a leader? Where do I use these gifts? And I just put here, if I get to hang out with you this summer, or in any other capacity, if you're an alumnus of the Awakening watching this video at another night tonight, I'd love to talk with you individually about this. But the church has not done a great job of stewarding worship artists. There's a lot to be said about that. And Moses' story is, like he said at one point, I didn't even know that I could get a job like this. And you heard his story of how he moved over here and he's mentored here. So it's a hard road, and there's a lot of expectations placed on worship leaders. And so my deepest joy is actually pastoring worship artists. I actually like caring for worship artists more than I like leading worship. So I just burned out. I was up there so much. And deep down, I'm like, Moses, I can do the people thing. I can hang out and have fun, goof around. But deep down, I'm an introvert. And 4 worship services a week. And Bruce Benedict is the current worship pastor, chaplain at Hope. And that things have shifted so much that he's able to empower other student leaders. So he's not up in front, because our culture has shifted since the time when Dwight, my predecessor, to now what Bruce is doing. And so he's doing much more of the facilitating. And so that's the question for all worship artists is, all right, I've got this impulse. At what level is God calling me to use this? And some of us can do lots and lots of stage time. It's just being on the stage in front of a lot of people is also dangerous for our understanding of our self-identity. So there's a lot to be said about this. I'll let you ask your next question.
Yeah, well,
So really quick, Jim, I'd love to just say something really quick.
please.
Because at Josh's time at Hope College, I wasn't a student at Hope, but I was involved indirectly, and I was there a lot. And I've never said this to you, Josh, either, but like the way you led really challenged me. It helped. It really shaped me in ways that even now I think about, because I've for those listening, I've been involved with churches that in some ways, I hope this comes across the right way, but have made the worship arts pastor, director, whatever you call it, role something that it shouldn't be. And it's that being that upfront person and being the rock star kind of mentality. And so just learning, hearing Josh say that and indirectly impacted me, his leadership, because I wasn't a student of yours, Josh, but I got to serve in some ways with you at times. And as a young person, it really just helped me. And I believe that, and I see what you're doing, and I've heard, people have been influenced by that, the care that you have for people in that capacity. So I just wanted to share that you've done that for me, and those listening, that's a huge thing. You've made me think about those things that maybe I wouldn't have. Sorry,
I
Jim, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
that's great. That's
I never had
lovely.
you were going on Moses about how you're self-taught. I never had the raw musicianship that could have allowed me to ever pretend that I could be a rock star. So you said at one point, Moses, that you had to learn certain things. When I hit roadblocks musically, technically, as a worship leader, all these years, I was like, I'll find somebody else to do it. So, and I also had it modeled for me. I remember the very first large Passion event that I went to in like 2001. It's in Fort Worth, Texas, and Charlie, who's my brother, he's written all these great songs that have shaped me and my church. And I go to this, there's like 15,000 people at that event. And there's, after that, they had like 100,000 person events and things like that. But that was the first one. And I saw Charlie down in this big arena in Fort Worth. And for those of you that have ever seen a picture of him, he had this goatee, this big, huge goatee. And they had these massive Jumbotron type pictures. I swear his goatee must have been like 15 feet long. And I was just like, this is so weird. My dear brother is now like the center. Like, where's Jesus in all of this? And I was really rocked by that. And then at a break time, we went down to check in on him. And I just remember I had a bunch of college students with me at that point. I was probably 21, 22. And I just remember they had this high-rise stage. And he just walked over, crisscross applesauce, sat down, just wanted to hang with us. And then he later would tell me about how he would ask people to pray over him as he would go out on the stage in these enormous venues, just that I would be a reflection of Christ and not allow myself to get in the way. So I appreciate your words, Moses, but I was able to do that because I had some incredible models that arose out of a local church that nurtured me initially. So thank you.
Speaking of nurturing, let me tag off that. I think of people in my own life that I can remember helping me form who I am and help direct or redirect where I wanted to go with a career. Do you guys think of people in your lives? You don't have to name names, but people or events in your life that help steer you and direct you as if God was pointing a certain direction for your life?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, I mentioned it before, but my grandpa was somebody who really, and my grandpa and my dad both influenced me in ways that I can't even sometimes, explain. I think their love, their humility, and their love for God really shaped me and inspired me to want to get involved in ministry, again, not knowing if this was something I'd do as a job or just something that I was going to always be committed to, just to kind of keep pointing people to Jesus. But those two people, and then there's a guy named Wren Brookheisen. I don't know if some of you might know Wren Brookheisen. He's someone who's always been the way that he's cared for people and loved on people and made himself available for people was something that even I just has inspired me over the last 15 years in ministry, just because he's made time, like you said, Josh. He was somebody who just has sat with me and just listened to me and me share kind of things that I'm struggling with or things that I'm disappointed with, and he never gave up on me, and he kind of asked me the right questions that really made me think, okay, I'm stuck right now, but can I move forward? And those people are really important. And obviously the people I've served with over the last few years too, they've all had a huge impact on me in my role and the roles that I've been able to play or be a part of in teams.
Cool, Josh. Anybody that comes to your mind? Yeah.
I mean, Charlie Hall is a huge influence, but the biggest influence on me in worship is my best friend, Brad Kilman. We sing a few of his songs at Hope Still. Only you deserve my praise, only you. Another one that hit the passion thing was We Are Hungry. We're hungry, we're hungry. So here's a guy who's he was writing songs that were getting picked up, and he was getting like publishing deals in our 20s, and I was fumbling around trying to figure out how to write songs. And Brad had invitations to go play with touring bands and some of my favorite bands. And he just wanted to get married, and he wanted to have a family. And it was honestly only until about 2 years ago that he left the corporate world. He had a position all through. He's got like 6 kids now. And he left a really great job to finally take a full-time position at a church, and took a massive pay cut to do that. And that's because he was the guy. We would do retreats for our students. We were helping as interns way back before I ever got any paid positions. We were interns, and we did this one college retreat, and Saturday, something like that afternoon, we had free time. And I remember the worship space was above some rooms that were downstairs, and I could hear Brad downstairs just singing to God, just playing his guitar. And like, let's say that was 1 o'clock, and I remember going to do something and coming back 3:30, and there's Brad still downstairs, just pouring his heart out, just spending. He's a brother that has always been one of my most trustworthy people, because no matter what, I knew that he just wanted to use his abilities just to cultivate a sense of the presence of God, enjoy that. And if he could write a song and a song came out of that, that's fine. It's funny that after all these years, he's now putting together a new record, and I've helped him up the stairs in that space. And so it's spiritual friendship that I've learned the most about how I can be a worshiper myself. Yeah.
Cool. You know what I really like to hear is when you both shared that you're not the person that just that craves to be the face of worship. The rock star idea that many people have of a worship leader. But both of you have been highly effective and transformational in other people's lives without being the rock star guy or woman that happens to be leading worship. So I think that's important for our students to hear too. It's not like only one personality, but God uses all the gifts that He's poured out to help others come to know Him and to lift Him up. So one other question I have for you guys, and I'll ask some students if they're interested in some things that they'd like to ask, but why awakening? Why does your heart beat for awakening? What stirs in you that you're like, I want to be a part of this. This is important to me.
You need to tap that first, Moses, since you're the newbie.
Yeah. No, hopefully I answered the right way. But Josh, right before you guys jumped in on the call, and Josh asked me. So, in my journey, I started at Ridgepoint Community Church in Holland, and then I went to a church, Christian Reformed church in Holland called Calvary Christian Reformed, and I spent 5.5 years there. And then I went to and along the way, I kind of learned and went into different roles, but still was doing worship. Then I was in a church in Hudsonville called Fairhaven Church, and so before just coming back to Ridgepoint. But anyways, Josh asked me right before the call. He's like, "So what made you come back?" And one of the things, it's kind of a combination of what Jim, what you just said. Hopefully this makes sense. I've tried to share this story with people over the last year as much as I can, but for so long, I didn't know what worship leading meant. And I was trying so hard to climb this mountain and along the way prove to people that I was capable, that I was talented enough, that I actually could lead teams, that I could cast vision, that I could listen to others, that I could do all these things. And so I struggled along that journey, because in the midst of trying to do those things, I was, failing and messing up, and there'd be some good things happening, but there would also be things where I was really struggling to grow. And so I would say about 4 years ago, I realized something. I think God was kind of revealing something to me that he taught me a lesson, and he said, you've done this for so long. Like now, once you get to this place, when you feel like you have proved to people, like what's the next thing for you? What's the next journey for you? And a good friend of mine, I don't know if you know him, Josh. His name is Tanner Smith. He worked with me at Harbor Churches. I love Tanner. He sat with me and we kind of were talking and dreaming about the future. And he said, "What if you were able to teach people some of the things you learned along the journey? And what if you were able to share your experiences and kind of, like support and encourage people along their journeys?" And so when I met with Jim and heard about what awakening is, and just to hear that it's geared towards young people, high school students and college students who have a passion and maybe a desire to kind of move into a role within a church or a ministry, I was like, man, this is really cool. Similar to the residency thing I was telling you about, Josh. But so awakening, because I think, man, this is so cool to be able to share with young people and to encourage young people and just really to share experiences. I mean, I don't know everything and there's still much for me to learn, but just to be able to kind of share and walk alongside and encourage and empower and just kind of be answer questions, whatever. And at the same time, be able to worship together and kind of develop a culture where we can serve and again build each other up. I don't know if that answers it, but
yeah,
right, awesome.
Yeah, I'd say the core thing that brings me back is that I believe there's something incredible that happens in the maturing years of middle school to high school to college. It's just a powerful time for emerging adults to ask all the big questions about their identity at the deepest level, as well as their gifts, and their place and where they fit, and so to be around that conversation is an honor. It's a real privilege just to be within earshot, to have some sort of ability to be a conversation partner. And that goes back just to my experience. I've talked about this before with the way the Spirit got a hold of me was when I was 12, 13, 14 at a summer camp that I went to throughout high school, and then became a counselor later. Just pivotal season of really going for God in a way that I couldn't in my regular school, finding other spiritual friendships there. As a matter of fact, the brother I was talking about, Brad Kilman, I was his camp counselor at one point. He taught me a Beatles song. So yeah, that's the answer. And I unpack some of that question. If you haven't looked at our podcast, I've been doing some podcasting on this question of what does a 16-year-old have to teach us, and that there's something about the way that God moves in teens that continues to be very, very powerful. We don't want to abuse that. We don't want to put teenagers up in awkward places that they don't have seen churches take really gifted youth and use and abuse that energy, instead of listen to it, instead of just learn from it. There's a lot to be said about that too. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me about that. But the other thing I'll say, that being a part of the awakening just allows me, as I sit here and talk with Moses, especially in all these years, I've spent so much of my energy, my life, invested in the question of the worship arts, the corporate worship arts, and I don't have a direct way to do that. I still lead at Maple Avenue every once in a while, but it's just a very cursory volunteer way. So the honor and the gift that Jim's given me to be a part of the awakening allows me to keep one foot in this world that Moses was talking about, this training, this question of coaching, and my long-term desire, even with my work with spiritual direction now, is identifying gifting and character, and seeing that where the Spirit is in the sweet spot and helping people grow their gifting and then also their character, and knowing more about who they are in Christ in the midst of the development of their gifts and their character, because that ultimately leads to your vocation, which is your calling, and that's pretty dang fun.
Well, you bring that in Awakening, Josh, in a huge way when the whole focus on Christ and what he's saying to us in the readings that we do, and it builds our character. It makes us more like him, and we just are so grateful for the part that you play in Awakening, because it's foundational. So thank you, and thank you, Moses. Looking forward to having you. Students, anything coming to your mind? We talked about a variety of different things. Anything light? Doesn't have to be serious. We talked a lot about serious things and trivial things too. But yeah, any questions that you have, Alex or Bethany or Eli?
I have a trivial question. Josh, I didn't know you were born in St. Louis. Where at?
Kirkwood.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually born in the city at a Jewish hospital there, but I grew up living in Kirkwood, suburb, till the age of 7.
Anybody else?
I have one for Moses. So is your background heavily like contemporary worship, or do you also have experience with more traditional / blended services? Just kind of where on like that spectrum have you led or worshiped in?
Yeah, so both. I'm super passionate about multi-generational worship, and that's something I think obviously my background, growing up in a small Spanish church, worship there was completely different than worship at Pillar or worship at Ridge Point and worship at Maple Ave. All 3 of those churches, or 4 of those churches that I mentioned, are super diverse in their style. And so I personally, something that I can't wait to share with you guys, I've struggled with even over the last 5 or 6 years, wanting to just go back to a traditional type of worship, and then the pressures of like the big worship and like the what everyone does with the Hillsongs and the Bethels. And then I don't know if you guys have listened to Upper Room or Maverick City, or those new groups that are coming out with worship. But even just a traditional, when I was at Fairhaven, I had never been at a church where we had a pipe organ. And so just being able to use that in worship. And it was so funny because the people that were excited about hearing that, and then the people that were like, why did you bring that out? We haven't had that out in 20 years. And so just the moments of, I personally think it's beautiful when we can incorporate all those different styles. But it was so funny. I'll never forget at Fairhaven, I literally got emails of people saying, we haven't seen that thing in 20 years. We should have just left it in the back. And it was funny. And so I had coffee with them, and they were just saying that they thought it would scare people away. And it was a really good thing for me to hear that and to just say, no, that's not, So to answer your question, I love different styles. And I even, I miss Spanish worship. I don't do it often because I'm not around it. And I think those things are valuable. And I'm eager for us to kind of dive into different worship and not just one style, but how do we incorporate and celebrate all those different approaches.
Alex and I are laughing because we're both organists. So.
Oh, no, that's awesome. I love it. I really do. I have a friend who actually plays harp really well, and I've used her a few times in and she's also a really good organist. I'm from Hudsonville, but I love that stuff. So for sure, we're gonna have to do some organ stuff. That'd be great.
Yeah, that we haven't done that. What's your piece? Christ.
All Hail Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did that about 3 years ago in Awakening. That was probably your first year, Alex, right? In Awakening.
My first year was Awakening too. So yeah.
Yeah. So Josh has that piece of music that he's written includes the organ. It's very moving. It touches people in a massive way. Remember the first time I heard it, I would just had goosebumps all over. Anybody else have a question before we wrap up our time together? Well, I am looking forward to this year in Awakening. Our student numbers are going up. Standards at Hope for COVID. We still have to be careful, you know, all that good stuff, but things are going on the uptick and more people are being vaccinated. And so I'm very excited about that. God's going to move in a mighty way through each of you, Josh and Moses. And Alex, I called you Alexander because I'm looking at your screen. Sorry, Alex and Bethany being interns this year. I'm thrilled to have you. You're going to be phenomenal. And Eli, I hope you can join us at Awakening. You're a senior this year, right?
I am a junior right now. I'll be a senior
Junior.
next year.
Okay, got it. Well, we hope you can join us in Awakening. And yeah, your brother wanted to be a part of it, but he was able to get a full-time summer gig. So good for him. And I just am very grateful. So I just want to close this out in prayer a minute, and then we'll go on our ways. Dear God, thank you for what you're going to do in advance. Thank you for the ministry that you called Awakening. Thank you for each person here and the way they're passionate about what they're going to do this summer in the lives of these students, and what you're going to do, Lord, in our own heart. Because whenever we pour out, you fill us up. So we're grateful for you, and we ask that you work in a mighty way and prepare these students that are coming, just the right students to come. Prepare them in such a way that they're ready to go to the next level with you, and their relationship and the way they lead worship and the way they're trained. So thank you, Lord, for what you're about to do. In your name, amen. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. And if you're going to seeing this online, we thank you for tuning in, and hope to see you in Awakening this coming summer. Awesome. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.
See
Tim.
ya. Thanks.
Night.